I came across a video on Twitter that the last I looked at had about 150,000 views on it. And it's someone who I'm not sure if they're really a teacher, feels like a teacher, who is giving a little lecture to Albertans on why they're really stupid for considering independence. And I should tell you, the new ECOS poll puts the number of people contemplating independence at 41%. And the thing is with 41% is it's not 50%, it's not a majority, but you can better believe that those 41% are extremely motivated. And I think there will be a referendum in Alberta this year. So here is an attempt by an Eastern woke sneerer. I don't know their pronouns. I'm guessing they, them. Let me play it for you. And I'm doing this because I'm noticing the number one response to people in Alberta who are talking about independence is to mock them, sneer them, insult them, and basically say, we don't care what you decide, you're not leaving. As if they actually love Albertans instead of just the money they extract every year. So I want to play this video for you. And I'm going to have a little, we'll pause it along the way, and I'll just give you a few of my reactions. And I'm calling my comments today, the case against Alberta. So go ahead and click play. I think this is a gal. Go ahead.
So Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta, is leading about 275 Albertans to think that separation from Canada is really a plausible idea. Time to get the board.
Okay.
If Smith would just sit in on my grade 8 class, all of this would actually be easier for her to understand.
Yeah, she's so dumb, isn't she?
Ignore the glare. It's going to work out. Don't worry, don't worry. It's new, but I like the picture-in-picture thing we got going on here. Stand by for the markers. This could be messy. Nobody really knows. Alberta separation. Oh, that's pretty.
Okay, stop for a second there. Do you notice anything there? Oh, just move it so her head's not in the way. This teacher, this scholar who's already mocking Danielle Smith for not being the sharpest knife in the drawer, she spelled separation wrong. Now, that's okay. It's a tricky word to spell. But when you're mocking a premier as stupid as she just did to Danielle Smith, and she's about to call Albertans stupid potatoes, like they're ugly and fat and dumb potatoes, it's best to make sure that you yourself don't come across as stupid. But let's listen to her points why Alberta separation is a bad idea. Go ahead, play the rest.
That's pretty. Come a little bit closer so you can get a front row seat. I'm going to give this little band of potato men trying to make deals with down south 7 legitimate, significant reasons why secession is a bad idea. Oh, can somebody explain to them what secession means? I don't have time.
Okay, stop
Number
right there.
1.
You're so stupid, you Albertans. You don't even know what secession means. You know what? I think that most Canadians probably wouldn't know what secession means had we not been put through the 50-year psychodrama of Quebec talking about secession. The 2 referendums, including one in 1995 that came within half a point. And not just the secession referendums, but the response by the political system in Canada to give Quebec tens or hundreds of billions of dollars to placate them. So in that regard, she is right. If we had never been forced to watch and then buy off Quebec separatism, we probably wouldn't know what the word secession means, although anyone who knows the U.S. Civil War would know the word. But you see what I'm talking about here? We haven't even got into the substance of it. And she's called Danielle Smith stupid. She's talked about potato man. Maybe she's talking about Jeffrey Rath. By the way, if I looked like this person, I wouldn't be criticizing people's appearance as my first point. And she spelled separation incorrectly. And she's saying we don't know what secession means. There's a commonality here. There's a theme here if you haven't noticed. It's called sneering at, condescending to, mocking Albertans. I don't think that persuades anyone, just a theory. In fact, I think it makes people angrier, and it confirms a stereotype that many Albertans have, that the rest of the country looks down on it, sneers at it, treats it as second class, but demands the money, don't they? Anyhow, keep playing.
Economic devastation. Capital will leave, corporations will leave, people will leave. This will devastate your tax base and, in all fairness, collapse your housing market. Is that what you were going for?
Stop for a second
Oh,
there. You do know that Alberta is by far the largest net contributor to Confederation. Over time, it's in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Every year, it's in the tens of billions of dollars. That's money that leaves Alberta, goes to Ottawa, and is redistributed, partly pays for Ottawa's successes, and is redistributed to other provinces through redistribution and transfer payments. The idea that Alberta, unhooked from its obligations to bail out Ottawa, would be economically devastated is precisely the opposite of what so obviously will happen. I have no doubt that there would be some dislocation and discombobulation, but all the oil companies in Alberta, they're not going to move because the oil is still there. Suncor, Syncrude, there's 100 oil and gas companies to name. They're going to stay where the oil is. They're not going to, the day after a referendum, they're not going to stop drilling. People aren't going to suddenly stop buying Alberta oil or gas. It's just not going to happen. I would worry for the Canadian dollar the next day, because if Alberta voted to separate, I would imagine the Canadian dollar would lose 5 cents in a single day. There would be economic devastation, but I don't think it would be for Alberta. Here, keep playing.
you think taxes are bad? You're going to try the whole tariff thing as well? Are you going to explain to the people it's still them paying the tax? Nah.
Okay, stop for
Number
a second about
two.
that whole tariff thing. Alberta's a massive exporter. That tariff argument doesn't make any sense. Donald Trump uses tariffs on companies that want to on countries that want to ship goods to America. He says you can only do that if we charge a tariff on them. Alberta's not going to charge tariffs. Alberta is actually a very free trading kind of place. Alberta, though, has an enormous amount of oil and gas that it sells to the United States. And the tariff is already on. I think it's 5% or 10%, something very modest, because you can't really tariff oil because it's a global commodity that's priced globally. Donald Trump knows that. And actually, Alberta and America are very strongly connected through the free trade agreement that Trump obviously negotiated and wants. The idea that Alberta would put tariffs on its export. I just don't even understand what she was saying, but she sure sounded certain about it, and certain that everyone else was pretty dopey. Keep playing.
Landlocked vulnerability. As a landlocked, newly independent Alberta, you're going to lose guaranteed access to pipelines and tidewaters instantaneously. Oh, were you going to rely on the rest of Canada to pick up the slack and make you guys economically solvent? Interesting. Or were you going to rely on the potato down south to swoop up and save you and rescue you and build you up to a sovereign power that you wish to be? Are you that dense? Number three, and
Okay,
they don't
stop for
tell
a
you...
second. I mean, maybe I am dense, but the way I see it is Alberta's landlocked now, as she says, and the other provinces block Alberta's access to the sea right now, as she says. I mean, isn't that the entire problem we've been talking about? The proposed pipeline from Alberta to New Brunswick, called Energy East, blocked by Trudeau, the Northern Gateway pipeline to the North BC coast, blocked. There is no access within Canada to tidewater. And I suppose she's not from Alberta, so she doesn't know that. That's the whole thing, is Alberta is being extorted by Premier Eby and this NGO, this US-funded NGO called Coastal First Nations. Mark Carney met with Coastal First Nations and said he met with First Nations. That's the brand name. That's the name of the corporation. Funded. It's not an Indian band. There's not an Indian band called Coastal First Nations. It's a lobby group that he met with. They currently have a veto. And you've heard that EB and Coastal First Nations lobby groups say they have a veto. It's not true in law, but politically it's de facto. And Mark Carney has said, yeah, in this MOU he's offered Alberta, it's a de facto veto. So the answer is Alberta would probably get better access to the sea as an independent country, because there is a concept of international law in allowing landlocked countries access to the sea. But I say again, do you doubt for a second that the United States wouldn't take all that Alberta oil. You saw Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent say that just the other day. Remember this?
With all the oil and the natural resources coming out of Canada, Texas is still larger.
Well, look, Alberta is a wealth of natural resources, but they won't let them build a pipeline to the Pacific. I think we should let them come down into the U.S., and Alberta is a natural partner for the U.S. They have great resources. The Albertans are very independent people. Rumor that they may have a referendum on whether they want to stay in Canada or not.
Sounds like you may know something up there.
Look, people are saying, people
are talking.
People are talking. People want sovereignty.
And Trump himself has said he wants to revive the Keystone XL pipeline. Remember this?
He says our country is doing very well, and he was just thinking about the company that was shooed away and canceled by the Biden administration who wanted to build the Keystone XL pipeline. He is inviting them back. We want the Keystone XL pipeline built. He wants a pipeline built in the Northeast, in New England, where I am from, where we have some of the highest electricity and utility rates in the country.
So I think she inadvertently makes the point. There is no access to Tidewater for Alberta now. Mark Carney's offer in the MOU to Alberta doesn't guarantee it. In fact, throws problems and blockades in front of it. Whereas Donald Trump and his cabinet have each said that they would love a southbound pipeline. Yeah, I just don't think this person knows much other than how to be condescending. And I don't know, but maybe I'm dense. Keep playing.
This in the brochure, massive transition costs. You're a brand new country, guys. You're going to need a military. You're going to need a currency. You're going to need passports. You're going to need trade relationships. You're going to need everything you have been depending on the rest of Canada for. Oh, and you're definitely going to need border security because, somebody from down south is just going to swoop up and take you over anyways. Number 4.
Stop that for a second. A bit of a comedy there about an army. Canada as a whole needs an army. We really don't have one that's able to defend our country. As I've mentioned on various shows, whenever there's something an incursion in Canadian airspace, it's a U.S. jet from Alaska or Washington that scrambles to get it. When that Chinese hot air balloon came over, Canada's Air Force was unable to stop it. It was Americans that were scrambled. Saying that Alberta wouldn't have a military because Canada does, it's sort of funny because Canada doesn't have much of a military. But there would be soldiers. There is a military base in Alberta, and if there was a question about who those soldiers would work for, you could just recruit new ones. There's no threat of an invasion to Alberta. But that is one of the things that has to be negotiated. That's probably one of the biggest ones. Getting passports is pretty easy. And I think anyone who has tried to get a passport in the last 5 years and knows how slow and expensive it is wouldn't exactly say that Ottawa is giving us great service there. There are some things that would change, but they're so modest. Trade agreements, Alberta does the vast majority of our trade with the United States. And we just heard from Trump that he wants that oil to keep coming, and he's got a very light tariff on it, which is practically zero. I think this person doesn't understand that Alberta is very integrated with the United States right now over oil and gas mainly and agriculture to a degree. Why would that change just because the rest of Canada is so hostile and condescending to Alberta? I think America would be so welcoming. It would be incredible. Here, let's keep watching. She's about to get desperate with her points. Take a look at this.
Fiscal challenges. I know Danielle knows this, but for her base that's so easily convinced and manipulated, fiscal is about money, fellas. So with your newly found independence, you're losing all federal support systems. There goes any money for healthcare, education, social services of any kind. And I realize you're trying to privatize everything already, so nobody has access to anything. Do the people of Alberta know that's what you're planning, or is that just in your head? Number 5.
Okay, stop for a second. Those 3 things that she outlined, healthcare, education, and social services, those are all under the provincial jurisdiction. As you know, in our Constitution, there's certain things that the federal government does, the criminal code, the army, and certain things the province does. Hospitals and schools are really the 2 biggest ones. I don't think she actually knows what a provincial budget looks like. It's not just Alberta, it's every province. by far the massive budgets in provinces are healthcare. Education is beneath that. That's already taxed and paid for by the province. The government of Canada does not pay for schools in Calgary. There may be some transfer payments, but they're rounding errors compared to how much is spent. And by the way, how much Alberta sends to the rest of the country. I just don't think this gal really knows how it works, but she's extremely certain of herself, isn't she? Keep playing.
Indigenous rights. The First Nations community within Alberta was there long before you. Now, we're not just talking about who was there first. We're talking about an Indigenous community that has established treaty rights with the Crown before Alberta's inception as a province. Not only were they first, but they have legal right to the land that you think you can just pull out from under them. Now, I realize Danielle and her ilk really don't care about Indigenous rights, but I would really like you to push this to the limit so they could take you to court and wipe the floor with you. It would make my heart grow 3 sizes. 6.
Stop for a second there. Can I invite you to do something that I think you would find very interesting? Can I invite you to read one of the many treaties with Indian bands signed in Canada? In Alberta, treaties 6, 7, and 8. You can Google them very quickly. I think one of the reasons why they're not in common parlance, why people don't talk about them a lot, is they're actually, they're very gentle and cordial, but in the very first sentence, what these treaties are is outlined, and I'm sorry to break it to you, they are treaties of surrender. The word surrender is right in there. These Indian bands surrender their rights, and in return, they get a small Indian reserve and they get certain annual benefits, health and education. They were described usually in the language of the 19th century. Those are they have certain rights under the treaty that would continue. As this person actually noted, the treaties were signed before Alberta was technically a province. Alberta becoming a province didn't interfere with that. If Alberta became some other entity, it would respect those treaties. And so would the Indian bands that surrendered. I'm not trying to be mean, but it was a surrender of a militarily weak society to a dominant military society. We don't like to use words like conquer because we want to be respectful and generous to our Indigenous friends. But those treaties cannot and will not stop the destiny of Alberta, not legally, not constitutionally. And by the way, implying that Danielle Smith is a racist or something is just simply a cheap shot. And I'm surprised it actually took this long for her to make it. Keep playing the video.
Pension complications. Oh, were you under the assumption that Canada was going to pay for your CPP when you left? And number 7.
Okay, stop for a second right there. Right now, the federal government is hiding from Alberta the accounting breakdown of how much money Albertans contribute versus other Canadians. And the reason they're doing that is because Alberta has so much higher GDP, and they have a high labor participation rate, and their workers are younger. It's such an economic tent pole for the whole country. It's so obvious. The reason why the federal government is literally hiding these numbers, and the province of Alberta may have to go to court to get them, is because Alberta is a massive over-subsidizer of the Canada Pension Plan compared to, say, and again, I don't want to pick on them, but let's say Newfoundland or Quebec. But here's the thing, and it's an interesting question I first thought about last year when someone said, would you still be able to keep your Canadian passport if Alberta is separated? Would you still be able to get your pension? Well, why wouldn't you? I mean, you can keep your passport if you live in Florida. You can keep your passport where, would the federal government say, hey, everyone who is a resident of Alberta no longer has that just doesn't even make sense. And if you contributed in your pension for years, that's an individual thing. It's not a where you reside, or it's certainly not a how you vote thing. Now, I'm sure that the pension would be one of the big things that was negotiated right at the top. But as I say again, that's a massive subsidy from Albertans to the rest of the country. All right, I think we're almost done. Go ahead.
Reduced trade leverage. Do you really think as a tiny little independent nation that you're going to have a better trade advantage to negotiate with the United States of America? Have you ever taken a class on power dynamics? Do you understand history at all? Do you understand what that's going to do to your oil industry? Because let me tell you, folks, they're going to walk in, they're going to take what they want to take, they're going to make you bend that knee and kiss that ring. And then he's going to walk around telling everybody how he turned you into the 51st state with actually no political power whatsoever. Hey, Danielle, can you clean off my board? I don't have time for this.
Yeah. Does Alberta have any political power within Canada right now? The federal election is usually decided before the polls even close in Alberta. Alberta is grossly undercounted in terms of seats. I mean, compare the 4 seats that little PEI has. The PEI has about 140,000 citizens. It has 4 seats in Parliament. Alberta has over 5 million. Proportionately, it would have double the seats if it were on par with the Atlantic provinces. The Supreme Court, there's a set aside of 3 out of 9 seats for Quebecers. There's so many things in which Alberta is underrepresented or completely absent from. Bilingualism is a way of keeping Albertans out of federal government jobs. To say that Alberta is an equal right now is not true. And to say that Alberta is... The entire implication of that hectoring, condescending speech is that Albertans don't know how good they have it, and that Alberta would be desperate if it was disconnected from Canada. The only thing that's keeping Alberta going is Canada. It's just astonishing to me that this has 150,000 views, although they could be hate views, people watching it to laugh. I think every single fact in there is wrong, including how to spell separatism. But the idea that Alberta is the poor cousin that needs to take a raw deal within Canada, that it can continue to be smeared every day by the CBC and This Hour's 22 Minutes, mocking Alberta and Danielle Smith in a way they would never do for any Liberal or Eastern politician, that Alberta has to be liberated of its money, so much so that the government will hide how much they're taking, that Alberta's industry can be cut off from the coast in a way that would never happen for an industry like Ontario's automobile industry or Quebec's air industry. I think the fact that they're sneering and they're hating means they don't realize, or maybe they do realize, that Albertans are more and more deciding they've just had it. I think the ones who are so angry and bitter and insulting, I think they're doing this to make themselves feel better, because I really don't think a single Albertan would be persuaded by that presentation, other than Albertans who are already anti-Alberta and pro-Mark Carney. There are a few of them. I tweeted that if that gal were put on a speaking tour in Alberta, going from town to town, from Red Deer to Pincher Creek to actually small towns and the big cities too, she would generate so much hatred, just like Mark Carney does, just like Justin Trudeau does. I think she would push independence over the top. What do you think?